Okay, welcome. This is a new IG Live sort of podcast, really just 15 minutes, called The Invaluable Educator. As someone who was a teacher myself and have worked with students and young people since I myself was a young person, since I was 18 years old. Now I'm a woman well over that age, so 20 plus years in the education space. I just thought that we need to give our kudos and our props to our educators that are on the ground, that are working with our students, that are thinking about how they can educate all of the professions, right? All the professions come from education as the stem point. You get all of your foundation, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're an engineer, you get it all in the education space. And I just want to just give a huge shout out to the work that the educators are doing, who are often they themselves overeducated but undervalued and certainly underpaid for all the work that they are doing. So we want to just make this a weekly series where we shout out our educators, where we talk about the amazing work that they do. And then I'm going to introduce my co-host, Jeffrey. So Jeffrey, you want to say a few
Yes.
words?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Jeffrey Clark. I am in both I guess you'd say, product management and consultant space, but I have a very passionate understanding when it comes to education. I did a little bit for myself when it came to coaching students and coding summer camp. So I
Yes.
have a taste of what an educator goes through, but I have a lot of respect for educators. As you see with Kwamara, she's done a lot for the community, and we were having this conversation at Duncanu and after the AI in e-commerce forum about educators and the invaluable role that they play in society. So we're kind of unpacking that here throughout this series, and I'm so excited and honored, honestly, to be able to co-host this with you.
Yeah, no, this is exciting. I'm glad that you brought up where we had this conversation. And I always, I know we're doing this virtual, but there's nothing like having in real life conversations with folks because you have this energy, this chemistry, and things kind of come up. And, Jeffrey he's an amazing inquisitor in a good way. He asks really great questions and sort of like unearths things. And so as we were talking at Duncanu, this restaurant, so we might as well shout them out. Duncanu, Black owned in Wynwood, Miami. Yes, Holla Caribbean. Love it. And it's a husband and wife team. So I love that too. It's a family run business and the sister is a GM and it's just beautiful. So anywho, we realized, or I think I knew, but some of the things that we were talking about is like, man, educators have to do so much. They have so many skill sets that can lend them to, yes, other businesses, but things that also just make them successful in the classroom and in the work that they do. And then Jeffrey just started asking me questions, and I was like, maybe we should put this on Instagram and make it alive and just see what we come up with and what we unearth. And we'll also talk things that that might come up in the week around education. What are some thoughts around it? We might bring in some people who are actually in the classroom to just hear what's going on. Because the point is, and I think this is really important, I go to a lot of education conferences. I go to lots of events, right? And oftentimes we're talking about teachers, we are talking about what's going on in the profession, and yet we don't ask the people who are in the classroom, who are the consummate professionals, who are the experienced ones, to lead the work, to tell us what actually is going on. Let's hear from your point of view. Let's give you the floor. You are the ones, you are truly the expert in the room. You know your students, you know
Yes.
what's going on in the class. And so certainly we want to use this platform also to just elevate the voices of those who are in the classroom, who are doing phenomenal work. And then if anyone has any sort of questions, or if you have topic ideas, or anything like that, please let us know. I will say that this is going to be a safe space, right? So I'm not here to hear about grievances that you have with your students, teacher. Oh, this happened in the classroom. Go talk to the principal about that. This is really about the professionalism that the educators do, in fact, bring to the table. And so one of the things that I did want to talk about that I know that came up in Duncanu, and Jeffrey was like, I didn't know that that was the case. And I was like, educators, more so, and this is true for even in relation to doctors, lawyers, etc., every year, in order to keep their licenses active, they have to take a certain number of continuing education credits every year. Not every 5 years, not every 10 years, but every year they have to take classes in professional development in order to
Yes.
keep their license active and on board. And then I was saying that the majority of people I know who have masters and then PhDs, EDDs are in the education space. There are so many people who I know who have masters, principals and administrators who have doctorates and EDDs, et cetera, in education. These are some highly, highly, highly qualified folks who are in front of your students. And yet we don't give them, we kind of like act like anybody could teach. Oh, anybody can do this. No, it's a special talent in order to know a subject area and to be able to translate that subject area to we could just talk about 30 kids in a class, but if you are teaching 5 classes in a day, each of those classes has 20 to 30 kids. You can imagine that's 100 to 150 kids that you are dealing with on any particular day that you get to know throughout an entire school year. And I don't think people like break down what that actually means and what the math is. I mean, I know adults who can barely deal with having to manage one person, let alone 30 people. I know adults who know, no offense, who are having trouble managing their own kids at home for just the evening time and the morning routine. Forget about having them throughout the entire day. And we saw some real concerns during the pandemic when people had to do remote work and they were on remote teaching. They were like, oh man, this is hard. And yet somehow we forgot all of those lessons, especially with some of the rhetoric that we're seeing from a political standpoint. Jeffrey, do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's really interesting what remote learning did to teachers and students, right? Because it removed that level of just like in-person learning and activities and just overall like natural bonding experiences that students and teachers would have had. So I think on one sense, right, whilst teachers who are teaching younger grade levels don't have to maybe monitor the class as much when it comes to running around or sitting down and things like that, still it takes away a fundamental area of human connection, I think, right? And I think now we see that accelerated with potentially AI. But go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the point about children playing and moving around and things of that nature. As a someone who still consults in the education space, and I get to see classrooms all over, not just here in Florida, but really across the country, and seeing independent schools, charter schools, public schools. What do schools look like in a rural environment, et cetera? And I will say, there has been a lot of concern around classroom management and student behavior, especially as it related to COVID, because the students didn't get a chance to really be social with each other during that time. And you're seeing some of the regression. But also, what I'm realizing is, especially once the kids hit middle school and high school, depending on what schools they're going to, and this is particularly when I see in public and charter schools, not particularly that much in private school, and I have a theory and a reason behind this. But every minute of their day is in the classroom. And the only time they get to socialize with each other is in the hall when they're moving from class to class, and they have very limited time to do that. And then when they're eating lunch, and again, they have very limited time to eat lunch. Let's say lunch is 30 minutes, maybe if you're lucky. But by the time you get down there, you get your lunch served, and then you have to pack up after lunch, you maybe have like 15, 20 minutes. So in a full day, their entire socialization is wrapped up in less than 60 minutes. As adults, we need more time to socialize. So you can imagine, especially students who need, especially in middle school, if you know anything about brain science, this is the time that they are absolutely trying to get to know themselves, understand their place in the world. And the way they do that is socially. That's the most important thing to them, right? Like, yeah, they love their family, of course, but they're going to take their family for granted. It's really about their friendships. It's really about that socialization, which I think is really key. And yet we don't allow, and the current structure of public schools, including charter schools, is that we do not really allow for students to practice these socialization skills, because their entire day is in these long block periods, 90 minutes, 120 minutes, around reading and math and science and history. And listen, as someone who loves education, I'm all for making sure that students love education. But could I sit for 2 hours a day in a reading class all day long when I was their age. I mean, I didn't really particularly like to do it when I was in college, when you had those long, long things, and we're asking them to do that
Ooh,
all day, every day. It's
yeah,
kind of bananas, to be quite frank. And then where do they get that time to really learn those soft skills, those socialization skills? Those are the skills that we hear from businesses that they want the students to know, and yet it's nowhere in the curriculum. So I just wanted to just point that out. Like,
yes,
we have taken all of the joy out of education based off of just the schedule. It's just the way that we've done the schedule has taken the joy and the love out of education, and we don't get the kids. The kids don't even move, and they don't get gym class. Also, gym does not happen every day of the week. They get it maybe two times a week, sometimes 3 times a week, depending. So when do they get all of that energy out of their body? When do they get to move and have that oxygen flowing to their brain so that they can actually receive information?
yeah. No, honestly, I'm really glad you brought that part up. That essentially, like, even the way the system is shaped, it's not really conducive to just growth, honestly, right? And I think that that video that you shared with me, there was a video where you said even the color scheme. Remember
Oh,
that one? That one where it's
yes,
like
yes,
even the
yes.
color scheme of the school as so. Just a little context on that one. Essentially, it was a video that Komar had shared with me, and it was basically saying that when we start out in elementary school and preschool, there's a lot of colorful things, right? It's making being at school fun, learning fun, all these different things. But as you progress, you notice the color gradually gets removed and gets or toned down. And it almost reflects the level of, what's it called? The level of standardization, if you will, and the level of just, I'm trying to find the word, but it's essentially like acquiesce. It's like, get in line, kind of like match with the status quo.
That's right. That's right.
It's like removing the critical thinking, removing the creativity, and making you conform. So I think that's one of the things that I've seen definitely when it comes to education, and I'm kind of curious as to what your take is on it as well, Kamar.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. And when people say that the system is broken, and I say no, the system is doing exactly what it's designed to do. It really is creating. And actually, you brought up AI in the beginning. I'm gonna make a thought here, which is why people are afraid, because they're like, oh my God, AI is gonna take my job.
Mm,
And that's probably true. So I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that it's not. But if you think about what the educational system was designed to do, it was designed to ensure that people were worker bees and could just do their 9 to 5. They weren't going to push back. They were just going to follow directions and just stay in line and do the whole thing. And I grew up in the 80s and remember all of those movies around people being in cubicles, and it was all bland. I mean, and so as you're thinking, I'm glad you brought up the thing about the color scheme. You start getting used to these sort of bland environments that are not conducive to creativity, but are in fact conducive to conformity. And if you think about it, if you're a conformed being and you're not using the things that make you human, which is your ability to be creative, your ability to think outside the box, your ability to be adaptable and flexible, and all you are is just an automated being, i.e., a
mm,
robot,
mm,
of course now you're concerned about the fact that robots, AI, are taking your job. Well, of course, because you've been conformed to
mm,
become a robot, to be more robot-like and less human-like. And that's what we're seeing, right? We're seeing just rote mass conformity, not thinking critically, and just taking things as they are instead of saying, here are multiple sources of information. Let me dive through it and then come up with my own sort of opinion. I'm being led a certain way. And so when you have a tool, a machine, a computer who can do the exact same thing that you can do, yeah, you're concerned. And so the point, so one of the things that we should be thinking about is like, what is education of the future? What does this look like? I mean, we are still using a system of education that was started basically during the Industrial Revolution, a little bit during the Agricultural Revolution too, which is when schools became important, why you had summers off, because that was the time where you were farming, and you would go uh, pick the Lord, I'm not even a farmer. Obviously, y'all can tell. Pick the what? Pick. Help me out here. Pick the plants, the fruits,
the
whatever.
cotton, the
What would you?
sugar cane.
The cat and law child. I mean, anyway, the point is that's why the summers were off were because of the agricultural calendar, but certainly during the Industrial Revolution and the idea that you would have public schools where students would go to school for free. The main reason why they did this because they wanted a population of citizens who would be mainly be workers and who would be workers
Mm,
for the corporations, right? And
mm,
who could fall in line with
mm,
that automated with that sort of assembly line. You know, the assembly line became really what you call it, which is where the 95 comes from, under Ford. So, like, if you know your history, so people listen. One thing I will tell you is like learn your history because you're going to see all of these connections. You know your history. But anyway, we're using a system that is well over 100 years old, and it has been working flawlessly, perfectly. But we are now in the 21st century. Things are changing. Robots are in fact taking over our monotonous jobs, and so here's a time where we can actually lean into our humanity and we can be more creative. And so what can school and education look like when we actually say, let's lean into the humanity of students, let's lean into the humanity of educators, let's make sure that we continue to respect each other and knowledge share. I think there's an amazing opportunity that's going on now. I mean, we're going to be going through a lot of upheaval, and we see it with all of the policies that are going on. And again, this is not a political, I'm not going to make this a political discussion one way or the other. But the point is, the policies are disrupting the status quo of what has been. So now here's an opportunity, I think, that we can take for what can be and what do we want to see in the future. And for me, the invaluable educator is important because I want the educators that are literally in the classroom to be part of the work of what we're thinking and reframing what education looks like, because they know the kids, they know their subject area, they're experts in several different things, their subject area, and they're also experts in kids, and therefore they're experts in human beings and relationships. If you
right.
don't know how to build really good relationships, you're not going to be an effective teacher. I don't care how well you know your subject area. So this is an opportunity, I think, to elevate the historically been silenced, who we have not shown a lot of um, honor to, and we don't show them that through their salary, we don't show them that through the way that we speak to, for, and about them. And so the invaluable educator is really an opportunity for us to elevate and bring the educators to the forefront of the conversation and start shaping and reshaping what education can absolutely look like, not only here in the United States, but we can think about what does education look like for people of different ethnicities, different genders, et cetera. Where are the nuances there as well? Jeffrey, did you have anything to add? And we're actually almost getting to time. We're only going to do this for about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
If you guys want it for longer, do let us know. But I thought 15 minutes a week is a good start, and then we can kind of play it out from there.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's so much that we can unpack here. But one of the things that I really do like that you touched on is the need for education to be transformed in terms of these like thoughts and these policies and knowing your history, right? Because if we don't know our history, we might repeat it in certain ways. It might be dressed up differently, it might appear different, but it's the exact same thing. And I think one of the things I'm very curious about is the role that this new AI focus, even I know we weren't talking politics, but from a policy perspective, I know early on in this administration, there was some kind of announcement for some AI, increased investment in AI. I'm wondering how that's going to affect the landscape of education and how, if we can actually leverage that, right? If we can leverage that to help children be more creative, or what your thoughts are on that, things like that.
Yeah, so interestingly, your sister actually sent me, I guess people love to hear my thoughts on education. She sent me an article about some work that was happening in some schools across the country where they have AI tutors that are really sort of teaching the kids in the class. And she wanted my thoughts on it. And I had a few, but I think that the truth of the matter is, the foundational things, reading, writing, math, all of that, to be honest, you can learn it on YouTube. You can use it through AI tutors. You can go to Khan Academy. There's multiple actual resources that kids can use with the help, and depending on what age they are, with the help of adults in order to learn certain things. I think that education actually needs to start thinking more about the soft skills. And what I mean by that is like, what does it mean to be a good person? What does it mean to be a good citizen? That's actually where I think that schools need to go. And those are the things that people should be graded on, not like, how well you do in algebra or in pre-calculus. I mean, in all fairness, I think I made a statement in another podcast I was a guest on, and I was like, how much do we actually use of the education that we learn in terms of the hard facts in our daily life? What we do learn, what we do use is our critical thinking skills, our ability to read, our ability to analyze, if we had high quality education that taught us those things, right? And that's what we use. But really, outside of like basic math and understanding some percentages, what else do I need? I mean, unless I'm going to be an engineer, what else do I need, intensive math for? And unless I'm going to be a doctor, what else do I need, or a nurse, or be in healthcare, what do I need intensive sciences for? What I need more intensity around at this point in time is certainly digital literacy, financial literacy, but also like, how do I just be a good human in this world? I think a lot of people, unfortunately, do not remember those lessons from kindergarten, and why are those only in kindergarten? And so those are the kinds of things I think that people should be graded on, is like your humanity. How compassionate are you? How flexible are you? How adaptable are you? How kind you are. I think I don't know why kind is getting such a negative way of being. We should be kind to each other. Like, so for me, that's where I think school needs to go. So I don't have an issue necessarily with the AI tutoring. And I do think that what we're going to see is continue to see a digital divide there. We are going to continue to see those who understand those pieces and have access to it much better than those who do not. And so we'll have to think about what are those gaps there. But ultimately, I think that if we focus more on educating the whole child, the whole human being, I think we will have much more, we'll have generations that are much more whole, that are much more healed. And if you are whole and you are healed, you are a better human being. And then you can work with people better. You won't have like all the things that we know that people are suffering from now, right? Anxiety, depression. And a lot of that comes from having negativity and negative people in our being. So the more that we can focus on people being positive, living happy lives, being joyful, and I can probably come up with some kind of list, and then we can figure out like, how do we ensure that people are living their best selves, and they have self-confidence, and they have self-esteem, and they feel like they are worthy in the world. I mean, I don't know if you saw, right, but there have been an uptick of young people. When I say young people, I mean literally starting like third grade age, fourth grade, fifth grade, who have suicidal ideation thoughts. I mean, that's
Third grade.
crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, it's insane. And so, and a lot of that is also bullying and all these other things. So like, how do we change behavior so that they're much more positive, and that the role models that the students go home to and the home environments that they go home to are regulated? Well, the way that we do that is create a society in which we care much more about human beings and less about whether or not they can be monotonous machines that make a whole lot of money for the 4 or 5 billionaires in the world.
Yeah, I think you summed it up pretty well. And one of the things I know we're basically at time now, but one of the things I'd love to discuss in the next conversation is, I think education has its roots into so many different areas of society. I'd love for us to explore the connections between education and various industries and like outcomes from that, because I feel like there's a lot to unpack there, even industries that are not typically like taught for, in traditional schooling. So
yeah, I love that. So that will be next on the list. We're going to talk about education and career pathways, industries, and how they all connect to each other. Thank you so much, Deshaun, for your commentary. We really appreciate it, and for you engaging with us. If you have any other ideas for topics in the future, please let us know. You can DM us on LinkedIn, Instagram, on the YouTube. We want to hear from you. We want to know what's going on. If you have, like I said, so any other topic ideas, or if you feel like we should spotlight a certain educator, please just let us know. This is going to be an iterative process. So we want to co-create what this feels like with our audience.
Yes.
So definitely appreciate it. Jeffrey, thank you so much. I appreciate you for like spurring this into our brain. And here we are a week later, making sure that it happens.
Yes.
And everyone tune in next week for the Invaluable Educator. Peace.
Thank you all. Take care.